Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. Great to see you, Graham, Ian, Philomena, and Preetham, and Urugaya, our guest speaker today. Feel free to turn on your videos and then we can make it interactive. But before we get started, I'd like to just start with an icebreaker. And this can go both ways. You don't have to share like your biggest, deepest, darkest, whatever fear, but it can be anything simple, but just a question. What is your biggest fear?
First one that come in my head is not having money, losing money. I don't know why that's the first thing that came in my head.
I was just gonna say spiders,
But
like spiders, but yeah, I can see how money is also a big problem. I think spiders are relatively small, figuratively and literally, when it comes to money.
Yeah, I'd say that, yeah, both of those would be on my list, but I used to be uh, deathly arachnophobic. I'd see a spider and I'd stomp it or smash it or whatever. I don't do that anymore. The other night there was a spider in the sink. I grabbed this glass, scooped the thing up, tossed it outside. I've actually been out in the yard and this spider crawling around. Looks like, yeah, spider should not be here. It should be up on a tree spinning a web. I'll scoop the thing up, put it in the tree because they're doing their job. They're eating bugs that are harmful or pests. We consider pests, but no, I'd have to say probably death. Just I mean, we're taught to believe there's an afterlife, and depending on the tradition, of course, here we come back for unfinished business. Some in some traditions, okay, that's it. Once you had this lifetime on Earth, okay, that's it. You're going to heaven or hell, or limbo.
Yeah, definitely relatable. I was gonna say dogs, and I think it's still a biggest fear. And I'm not saying like bigger ones, I'm saying like even a puppy. Uh, so I would say like I think I'm scared of dogs. But that would be like a kind of on a lower platform. But I would say another type of maybe like materially, like not being as successful or like not having more money to live like the lifestyle I want would be a fear as well.
It's interesting you should mention dogs because I mean dogs are man's best friend, but I can see where uh, the way they attack other animals, they gang up, and wolves attack in packs.
Yeah.
You may have in a previous life, been attacked by wild dogs or wolves or the equivalent elsewhere in the world, jackals in Africa, and so
Yeah. I feel like
We
I've
got
had that
jackals here.
experience too.
what's
Sorry,
that?
go
Say again. I was saying we have jackals here also, jackals. But they're kind of cute actually. Here in Marco. Jackals, I think they're like scavengers, they're not actually going and attacking animals. At least the ones here in Marco. I don't think they're like hunting, they're scavengers. They just eat whatever they can find.
Where are
Why are
you
we talking
streaming
about
from?
that? I'm from Mayapur, West Bengal, India.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're kind of
Well,
small and cute. The
jackals can
dogs
be
are
like
so mean though. Dogs are mean. The puppies are cute, but here we get a lot of like street dogs, like wild dogs. Gosh, they're so mean to each other and to other animals, especially jackals.
Right, anyone else want to share one last time? Oh, Pritam, I see you.
Yeah, my biggest fear coming to mind is often social situations. Sometimes I find myself in social situations where I'm afraid to do anything. I'm like just there. Uh, especially one instance comes to mind when I went to a conference and I saw a person who had worked on a particular thing that I had been using for a very long time, and I couldn't go and talk to him, even though I wanted to. But I was like, how do I start this conversation? How do I go talking about what do I even talking about? So that was a lot of fear that I felt that just crippled me there, and I wanted to do something, but I could not due to fear.
Mm. Yeah, I've definitely related with that. Like, especially going out of your comfort zone and like reaching out to the other person, it's scary. Yeah.
I have to
Uh,
add to that. If I'm in a conference or like a team meeting and somebody puts me on the spot, um,
mm.
yeah, that would make me uncomfortable, and yeah, I can relate in that respect. Sorry.
Wait, no, no need to apologize. All right, anyone else want to share before we move on? Great. All right, thank you everyone for sharing. Hopefully we can overcome or address these in today's talk. But I'm so, so excited to welcome back Urugaya. He's been with us in Wisdom Wednesdays before. Maybe you've been and attended one of his talks before, but they've been awesome and amazing. And as he mentioned, he's currently in Mayapur and just want to share a little bit about you and what amazing like speaker you are. So, Urga has been, distributing like food, vegetarian food, and he's been doing mantra meditation for a long time. And now him and his wife, they travel and go between India and different places just to sharing the knowledge of Bhakti Yoga. And he's also been a full-time monk for about 6 years, I think. So much knowledge during that journey. So thank you. And we're so grateful to have you. And yeah, we can't wait to hear more about fear and the lens of Bhakti Yoga from you. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much. Nice to see you guys and Graham, I remember, and to the others, if I know you, but I don't remember, I'm sorry, but I'm happy to see you all. Just a bit of a quick announcement from my side, like if I disappear, it's because the power went off. I'm sorry, I'll be back really fast. And like at the time that this meeting is supposed to scheduled to finish, I'm supposed to get some neighbor knocking on my door. So if by chance we go overtime and then someone's banging on my door, please excuse me. So yeah, today this topic of fear came up. And I remember like when we were like how we want to go about it, one of the things came up was like overcoming fear. And I was feeling a little bit like fearful about speaking about overcoming fear because I think it's not just like a 45-minute conversation and all of us we're all enlightened and then we don't have fear anymore. I think it's not such a simple thing. But my plan was to try to approach it through the lens of Bhakti Yoga, and one of the foundational, wisdom texts of Bhakti Yoga is the Bhagavad Gita, and I wanted to refer to the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, I feel like I did a little bit of injustice to you guys in the sense, like, I think the topic is really beautiful, and the Bhagavad Gita deals with it a lot. It means like, there's a lot of um, interesting things that can be exposed on the topic, and especially in reference to the Gita. Anyway, let's just jump in and see what happens. I found it interesting with the icebreaker that, like what's a fear that you have or what's your greatest fear? And I was reflecting on how we all answered, including myself. And it's like actually if you see, except for like Graham was like, fear of death, which I think is like very honest and very like real. And like I remember there was a time when I first started like seriously practicing my spiritual life, like when I was living in the temple, living as a monk, like very, very intense program. I think at that time I kind of superficially think that I'd conquered this fear of death because I was like operating on a very like I don't know the right word, like lofty is not the right word, but a very like theoretical platform of existence, where which we'll dive into in today's topic. But I remember there was a time in my life where I thought that I'd conquered this fear of death. But then as time went on, and especially like, entering into a relationship and entering into the world and like dealing with money and working and all of these things, then I definitely feel like the fear of death entered again into my life. Like that I actually haven't like overcome or conquered this fear of death, that it's actually very strongly within me. And that's simply because well, not simply, but one of the reasons is that I just feel that I'm not ready to die. Actually, it's not only that I have unfulfilled desires and things that I would like to do in this world, but also, I mean, there's a verse in the Gita that I wasn't planning on addressing today, but because it came in my head, it says yam yam vapi smaran bhavam cha jatyante kalevram. It's saying like whatever state of consciousness you have at the time of death, that consciousness is actually like manifesting or creating your next reality, like the body or the life that you enter into. So therefore, like I wouldn't want to leave my body right now because my consciousness, I feel I haven't prepared it sufficiently for that moment of leaving this world. So therefore, I have a fear of death. So then I think we changed the title of this topic a little bit, like about courage and all these things. 'Cause I was thinking like, oh, overcoming fear, like I myself have fear, you know what I mean? It's like a practice. We don't need like 1 hour, we need like one lifetime. Um, but then if you see like how we spoke, those other people who opened up about their fears, like actually, except for the death one, I'd say they're all pretty like mundane and insignificant actually. Like, like, oh, I'm like scared of not being materially successful. I'm like scared of, like social situations. Like, I mean, they're all genuine, real fears. But like one I was thinking was like, sometimes when we do like a mantra meditation, like a big group or like in a big temple, and then like, someone like asks you to sing or lead, and then you have to like hold this space in front of like 100 people. It's like really scary actually. So but I didn't hear anyone say, like, as I was reflecting, I didn't hear anyone say, like, oh, my fear is that, like, my essence, like, the very being of myself, like, beyond this body and mind, like, me as a being on the existential level, like, somehow not achieving its highest potential, and somehow, like, me as a spiritual being, not, like, reaching my full potential and taking advantage of the human form of life and, like, entering into, like, the highest potential of my being. Like no one put up their hand and said like, this is my fear. You know, I'm scared that I'm not gonna like do the thing that I can be doing. You know, like for most of us, it's like, yeah, I'm scared about losing things in this world. So anyway, let's try to jump into it. So I'm speaking to you guys from my phone because I'm a tech idiot and it's easy for me. But I also have my laptop next to me because I want to look up some verses from the Gita. So I suppose all of you are on your phones or your computers. So if you want, you can just like, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna type in the verse because I kind of know where I want to go in the Gita, and you guys can look it up or you can just listen, and I'm gonna read to you. So when I'm searching in like the Gita or like any of the like Bhakti Granthas, then I'm using one website called Database, and I'm very happy with it. But to each their own, you can just search the Bhagavad Gita. The only reason I would suggest using the database for today is because then we'll all have the same translation, but it really doesn't matter, and I'm not planning to go so much into any of the purports. So let's see what happens. The first verse I want to look up from the Bhagavad Gita is 2:12, second chapter, 12 verse. Oh no, 13th verse, sorry, not 12. Bhagavad Gita 2:13. Database, and that should be Dahina Smita Dehe Pumaidan Yoganandara. So the reason that I picked this verse, 2:113 of the Bhagavad Gita, oh cool. Looks like some intelligent person is doing intelligent things. The reason that I chose this verse is because I mean the Gita is full of wisdom. You know, the Gita, of course, it's like we use religious jargon. In one sense, it's like a Bible of the Hindus. If you want to like put it in a box, but it's really like full of very practical wisdom, which I will try to, try to present in a way that's like relevant despite anyone's like particular situation. But this is essentially like the first lesson of the Gita, spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. It's pretty much a lesson that's saying that as your soul, you, you, you as on the existential platform, the soul, we can all understand that, the soul. You had the body of a baby, you had the body of, teenage, you had the body of an adult. Maybe some of us have like older bodies. This body is changing all the time. You have a different body now to you did when you were a baby. The body changes, but you are still you, even though your body is different. So you have an existence which is separate to your body. And someone who is like here, a sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Oh, you guys are still there? Yes. Yeah, sober person is not bewildered by this. And anyway, the reason I highlight this source is because it's the kind of the first lesson of the Gita that's taught. And it's pretty much saying that you are a spiritual being that has an existence beyond the body. And the reason that that's kind of like the first lesson is because this, even if we don't accept, at least we need to then enter into these teachings with like a theoretical understanding, because this concept of you having an existence beyond your body, not even beyond your body, beyond your mind as well, like you having an existence, sets the foundation to enter into the rest of the Gita. So yeah, that's the first verse I wanted to touch on. The body or the soul or the spirit, and even if you die, like Graham was saying, fear of death, which we all have, including myself. Even if we die, it's not the end. And if you don't believe it, just be theoretical for a minute. Then I want to jump to the next verse, 2:14, just saying Marcha Spashas Tukuntiya Shitoshna Sukadukada. And the reason I like this verse is because I remind myself all the time. I remind myself many happiness and distress. Sorry, I got muted for a sec. Happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer. They arise from sense perception, and one should learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So the reason I like this verse is because it's kind of like a mantra that I repeat to myself not only when times are going tough, but when times are going good. Because it's very easy to get caught up like when life is good and we're happy and we're jolly and everything's good and we can function, we can participate. But then when times are bad, I mean, I know last time I spoke, I mentioned I was coming out of like a very difficult period. The principle is to be like not overly excited in the good times and not like overly disturbed in the bad times, but try to be a little bit equipoise. And then the reason I like to highlight this voice is not only mentioning like this analogy, like same way, I know you guys are in the States, so now it's becoming summer here also. It's becoming hot, whereas in Australia, where I'm from now, like the winter is coming. But this is just a perpetual cycle. Like there's literally nothing we can do yet, and hopefully ever. Nothing we can really do to change this cycle of like summer and winter, spring, autumn, whatever, this cycle. The cycle of life. There's nothing we can really do about it. We're just in it. And therefore, this verse is mentioned, they arise from sense perception. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sense perception is mean like in relationship to your body and your mind and your senses. Like I can completely relate to this experience where actually externally in the world around me, everything is pretty much the same. Means the same people going, the same, it's right, like shopkeepers and you know activities. It's like okay, you know the world is constantly changing, but externally everything's kind of the same. And whether I'm like happy or sad, or whether I'm like inspired or uninspired or whatever, is really based around like the feedback I'm giving in my head, or the voices in my head, the voice in my head, like the way that I'm thinking, like my perception of the world. Because sometimes I have this experience, I don't know if it's relatable to you guys, where like externally everything's the same, but like sometimes I'm happy and everything's good, and sometimes I'm sad and everything's not good. So in the same way, like summer and winter is coming, happiness and sadness is also coming on its own. So there's an element of like having to tolerate when we're sad and not being like overly excited unnecessarily. Like I'm not saying don't relish the good parts, of course, like ride the good, be satisfied in the good, but don't be like overly attached to the good. Because then when the bad comes, we just like put on the floor, we're not able to function. Whereas if we're a little bit equipoised, then whether we're happy or whether we're sad, we're still able to perform the things that we need to do to maintain our body or our families or our duties or our dharma, you know, or our service, whatever it is. So I'm going to jump to a couple more verses and then hopefully it's all going to come together. In one sense, I've done an injustice to you guys because it's such a nice topic and there's so much cool things in the Gita. It'd be nice to make it like a little bit systematic. But anyway, I'm just going to follow my inspiration and try to put it all together. So the next verse I want to jump to is 69. Mark Bhagavad Gita 3.6. I'm looking for this Crow to Asia verse about being angry. Oh no, it's the next one, 270. 269 is also a cool verse, talking about how like he's talking about how like for the yogi or the sage or the spiritualist, and then like for the completely materialist, living like completely opposite. Like night is day and day is night. And like the materialistic person, they look at the spiritualist like, man, these guys just wasting their life. Like they've sacrificed so much. They're not like enjoying this world. What a waste of a life. And then the sage is looking at the materialist like, man, these poor guys, they just like wasting their life. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting the verses wrong. But this is also a beautiful verse, 270. Hope you're all with me. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which has ever been filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So we're getting to a verse where it specifically mentions fear and anger. And this is the next verse, or I missed it. I have to look it up. But this is nice because it's kind of reminding us that, you know, if we think that we're not going to be bombarded by fear, if we're not going to be bombarded by desires and attachments, like practically we've experienced, that's our situation, that we are attached to things in this world. We have desires, we get agitated, we get disturbed, we get happy, and we get sad. So a nice principle here is that, actually you have unlimited material desires, and you would need more than one lifetime to satisfy them all. Like practically you can see that. Or even if I just look at my life, like in the last 5 years, how, we started with like very little. And then as like we expand and we work and we push, like the thing expands and then like boom, and then like all of a sudden you have more facility and then again like boom, again it expands. Um, and actually for me to go back to how I was living, 5 years ago when I first came to India, like in a little box, I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like couldn't. So like it's amazing. Like even though like now I have desires, I want like a good space, and then as soon as you get a good space, then all of a sudden after some time, like again, you need to expand and expand. So actually, you'll never be able to come to the end of this expansion, only like with a spiritualized intelligence or whatever, like, kind of like from a superior platform, you can kind of like cut this, like, hey, stop endeavoring to have like more and bigger and better. It's like you're never going to be satisfied. Actually, like here in Mayapur is so wonderful. Now I'm also learning, like my friend has a little bit of land and I'm learning from locals here teaching me how to garden. And I have another friend with a piece of land just up the river. And, the idea is like, you're growing vegetables from the land and then like the seeds, hopefully you get these like organic seeds that you can keep using again and again. Pretty much you're like growing like simple like vegetables from the land and then you're like cooking it there with like the wood which you also like took from the land and then making like oven stove out of clay and like houses out of clay, like really just like 100% living off the land, trying to get to this level. And even though you only have like small little mud house and like everything's like pretty like basic, actually this is real satisfaction I'm experiencing in my life. Like it's just being connected to the land. Like you planted the seeds, you watered them, you took care of them, you took the fruits, and then which hopefully I get to if we're throwing out of time. Like you offer it in yagya, sacrifice, to maintain this balanced universe. And and then you enjoy the fruits and you feel so connected and so like a part of this system actually where like you don't even need petrol. You don't even need electricity actually. Okay, we're using, but and I feel like this should be the goal of human life. And this is like real satisfaction, just to be satisfied with like the simple kind of like nature's system. But of course, most people or many people are not having a desire for like little land and little vegetables and little house. More the opposite, like the way I remember I always bring it up. I was having a conversation with my stepfather and I was saying like, if I had all this money of Elon Musk and all this, like I'd buy so much land, I'd like grow so much vegetables and it's like this going to Mars is such a waste of money, like who the hell cares? But then he raised like really good point, like that's like your mentality. But actually, people want technology. They want to have like good stuff. They want to have like efficient systems. They don't care if they live in the desert as long as they have like good technology and all this stuff. But my point is like actually this, no matter how much you evolve, you're never going to be satisfied. At some stage, you need to be satisfied. And one of the points that came up was like a fear of like not being materially successful. Like if you're satisfied with what comes, what's easily attainable, then it doesn't really matter. Like you can kind of find that satisfaction in yourself. Anyway, someone's got to help me because I'm looking for this Crota Asia verse, like from meditating on the objects of the senses, one develops attachment, from attachment. Let me try to look it up. Somewhere in the second chapter. 2.62. We're gonna look at this verse. Yes. And then 263. Anyway, for some reason in my head, I thought this verse was specifically talking about fear, but it's talking about anger. And I learned something really interesting the other day, which is probably completely irrelevant to all of your lives. Um, But here, so they're speaking Bengali, right? So the Bengali word is because Bengali also coming from Sanskrit, actually. And then the Sadhu Bhasha, like the very high level Bangla, that's like, very scholarly and poetic and like cultured, not just like the slang that we speak here, is actually pretty much just Sanskrit. Um, so in this verse, there's a word kroda, which means anger. And the in Bengali, kroda means attachment. So the original Sanskrit word kroda, which is in the Bengali, means attachment, which I found super interesting, which probably none of you do. But the reason I found it super interesting is because here in this verse of the Bhagavad Gita, it's talking about attachment, like jayata, contemplating on the objects of the senses, one becomes attached. And then from such attachment comes lust, and then from lust comes anger. And I would highly recommend you guys to read this like, series of verses. They're really beautiful. And the purports if you're inspired. The reason I found it interesting is because like in the Bangla, they just like cut out this process of like meditating, attachment, lust, like more attachment, and then like unfulfilled desires leads to anger. Um, Whereas in Bangla, they just like cut from the beginning. Like attachment and anger is like the same word actually because it's kind of inevitable. So this is like a nice meditation for us. Like, what are we attached to, and what are we fearful of? We started the conversation like that, but then many times, like if we're attached to something, um, it can lead to this, like if we don't fulfill our desires, we don't like achieve what we want, it has kind of like a bad effect. Like we get fearful or we get angry or whatever. So it's like kind of a powerful meditation actually to try to understand the sequence of like growth, like being attached, and then this attachment having like negative effects. So I want to try to give you guys something practical from the Gita, from the wisdom of Gita. And I'll try to finish on this point. Because something practical means like, okay, we're speaking about like fear and attachment and like, okay, we're not the body, so if we're not the body, then we shouldn't be scared because anyway, like nothing can hurt us or whatever. But the Gita in the third chapter, we jump to the ninth verse of the third chapter, Bhagavad Gita 3.9. It brings up this concept of yagya. So as I said somewhere earlier in this discourse that this Bhagavad Gita is kind of like a Bible for the Hindus. So this section of the Gita is bringing in a concept called yagya, and it's done in the relationship to Vishnu. But there's a few verses here which I would like really recommend you guys to read. But I'm not planning to go through it. I just wanted to introduce the concept of yagya and kind of just talk about it a little bit and then try to wrap everything together. So the verse is Yajnatat Kamanonyacha Lokoyam Kama Bandhana. Saying work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in the material world. Therefore, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, in that way you will remain free from bondage. So essentially, yagya is a really interesting concept, which I very much like try to base my life around actually as a principle. And of course, like, it's good to read these verses and try to understand, but yagya has been translated into English as sacrifice, which works well. It's just that sacrifice kind of sometimes has negative connotations, whereas I think yagya is actually a very like awesome thing. Like in previous, like so yagya is like a Vedic concept, and in different periods of time, like previously, yagya was like I guess I would say like a little bit more ritualistic or religious. Like you might have seen in Hinduism, like these big fire sacrifices, like with mantras and putting things in the fire, and like a whole situation. Um, so although if you have an inclination towards such practices, I would highly encourage it. This is not the kind of yajna. I mean, as a principle, it is, but that's not the kind of external practice that I wanted to recommend to you guys. The yajna that I wanted to discuss is essentially maintaining a balance with the universe. So in the next few verses after this, you would read about how pretty much like, in the Vedic concept, the universe is essentially like alive, and there is kind of like a cosmic harmony that exists. And that's pretty much like humans maintaining a proper balance, like doing dharma and maintaining like a proper balance with nature, so that like all the things flow nicely. Like, you get like proper rain and light and things grow nicely, and there's no like kind of calamities. Um, Whereas, we from this particular tradition, we would argue that these days, yagya is not being performed. People don't really know about it or don't really believe in it, and therefore there's kind of a lot of chaos. So yagya is pretty much like maintaining a balance with the universe. Okay, so what does that mean practically for us? Pretty much means like recognizing that we have a source, that we are connected to something that's greater than ourselves, that is like present at all times in everything, and we are connected to. The only reason we may not feel connected is simply like, for lack of a better word, like ignorance or like a misidentification with this material body or like our material situation. But essentially, Yagya is like understanding that we have like a source that we're connected to, and Yagya is about trying to like be connected to that source. I mean, that's literally yoga, connect. And Yagya is very much a part of yoga, but it's not like the asanas or the stretching or whatever. Yagya really means like sacrifice is a good word, and I'll tell you how. Like, so like bhakti yogis, they would yagya means like pretty much like your offering or your sacrifice like to your divine source, or trying to be connected. And it's actually very practical. Like in bhakti, we we use our senses and our body. Even though we understand, like from the first lesson of the Gita, we understand that we're not this body, still we use the body and the senses to connect to our source, because that's what we have. Priti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavsa sarinabhita. Nitya siddhyasya bhavasya prakatyam priti sadhita. It's pretty much saying like with our, this is a Bhakti Yoga text, saying that with our material body and our senses, we engage these senses like in trying to connect to our source. So, okay, like practical, what does it mean? It can literally just be like a feeling of gratitude. Like, wow, like, okay, you wake up and like, okay, you're not dead. Okay, maybe your body's a bit sore, but like, whatever. Like, okay, today I've been given this life. I'm going to do something good with it. Like, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for like, the opportunity, like, whatever, to contribute something to this thing which I'm a part of. Yeah, that's a very easy, very practical thing to do. Or like, for example, like those who are into some kind of sadhana, like a daily spiritual practice, like doing yoga is a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing like the movement of your body. And like it's very much, yagya is very much about like not so much the external activity, but more the consciousness in which you perform the activity. Like, yes, the activity is important because it has a reaction and a result. But it's very much like the mentality behind it. Like if we're doing yoga so I can be flexible so that I can look good naked, it's not like the not a very good sacrifice. But if you're doing yoga so you can have a nice body, so that you have a body fit to like serve or like to be connected or to participate in this thing or like to give back, then all of a sudden it's not about you. Hegel has a very nice or die to live. That's very much the mood of yajna. It's like sacrificing yourself for the greater good. But the greater good doesn't mean like, you have to give all your money to charity or something like this. The greater good really means like that source from which we're a part of, like that thing which is connecting everything. Like the example is given by watering the roots or the leaves and the branches are satisfied. So yajna is really about like you and your relationship with divinity and trying to connect and serve that divinity. That's very much the mood of Bhakti Yoga, like to serve that and participate in that. And So like, yeah, give practical example, like just being grateful is one thing, or like, for example, we're doing exercise or whatever, and then we change our consciousness that like we're doing it so that we can like participate in a healthy way. I can have a healthy body for service. It's not about me looking good or being strong or like attracting the opposite sex, but it's like, so that therefore then whatever like things that we do, if we change the consciousness, then it actually becomes yagya. Or like, for example, those who meditate, they're doing a yagya, it's a sacrifice. They're sacrificing their time. They could be like doing whatever, making money, watching TV, but they're like doing a meditation. This is the yagya, especially if the mood is like, I'm trying to like situate myself in the mode of goodness. I'm trying to be in sattva. I'm trying to have clarity so that I can like better participate in this thing which we're all a part of. Or like for those using mantra, chanting mantra again, like, you're sacrificing like your energy, you're vibrating, you're hearing, you're sacrifice. It's also a yagya, sacrifice of hearing. There's a verse like this in the Bhagavad Gita, because obviously it goes on and describes different transcendentalists and the different yagyas they do. But my understanding of yagya is not like, so it's like a universal principle that's actually very relevant and applicable. So we sacrifice the hearing that's there in the Gita. You sacrifice your hearing by like hearing about like spiritual topics, or hearing like mantra, or like, hearing like elevating your consciousness is also a yagya. Or for example, here in Mayapur, we have a seva where, we cook. Okay, before we get together, that's also another thing. Like when you prepare like items that you're going to eat, I mean, Vedic, it's in the next verse or the next couple of verses. It talks about like how, everything you do in the world causes bondage. And then this bondage is basically like, at least in the Vedic system, another body, another life, another birth, like this bondage, karma. So bhakti yogis or anyone performing yagya, they try to arrange their life in such a way to be free from bondage, because like if you offer, if you perform yagya and you're connected to this divinity, this divine source, then it's almost like, at least according to this system, you're not actually generating karma. But that's a whole thing that I don't really want to or need to go into. But it's like, for example, if you like have some fruits or you like prepare something, you can like say a prayer. Like praying is also yagya. You can say a prayer, or you can just like from your heart, like as an offering, like, I like, these fruits came to me by nature's arrangement, like whatever, this came to me, and like now I'm going to eat it to nourish my body. Like, but like you just like say a little prayer, like a little gratitude. This also yagya, like, wow, this like came to me, like, okay, like respect, and please like nourish my body. And these little changes in perception, where you like connecting on this principle of yagya, actually transforms your world into this like harmony, a state of harmony with this thing which we're a part of. Or like here in Mayapur, like another yagya we do is we cook like big meals, and we also offer it, like pray, like try to put good energy and gratitude, and we offer it, and then we distribute to like a lot of people. It's also like a yagya, like charity and these things. But again, it's like the consciousness behind it, because you can also like feed 400 people, and you feed them because you want to be glorified as a very charitable person. So now you've kind of muddied the yagya. It's all about you. Whereas if you just do it because like, actually I'm an instrument of divinity, like I'm connected to this thing, I'm like part and parcel of this, like whatever this amazing, weird, mystical thing is that we call life. I'm a part of it, and I want to be an instrument, and I want to be like aligned. So therefore, somehow this facility has come, let me use it in a proper way, not for me, but for the greater good, with that goal, with that fixed on the yagya principle. And then all of a sudden, like I remember sometimes I'm so unhappy in my life for whatever, just stupid chemicals in the brain. I make this service, I go, I cook, it's hot, it's heavy, and then like, and you just feel like satisfied. Like, as long as it's not really about you, like you can feel satisfied, you can feel happy that you did it, but it's like not for your pride and not for your ego and not for your like, and you just feel connected. And these are all very external things. There's also like, very internal yagyas, where like through meditation, through prayer, through mantra, like in the Bhakti Yoga tradition, we consider mantra to be what's called the Yuga Dharma, or like the yagya for this age. It's really like coming together with as many people as possible, and it really helps if these people are like-minded and like not exploitative, like they kind of care about you and they want the best for you. But these like-minded people, they come together, and they do like mantra yoga, like vibrate mantras, vibrate like divine sound that we believe not the origin is not in this world, but in that divine space. And we try to like vibrate these energies and try to like, through yoga, like bring this vibration down to the earth and manifest this like spiritual vibrations, like collectively. And that's a huge part of the bhakti process. And all of these are yagya. So that's something I really wanted to emphasize today, because if we're doing yagya, there's not really any scope for fear. Fear is natural, and I don't even think that I should say fear is a bad thing. Like sometimes I think fear is a good thing. Like sometimes my wife, she says to me like, "Oh, I'm not scared that like, you know, you're gonna like run away or something like this. I'm just like scared you're gonna die." You know what I mean? Because like I'm a bit externally active in this world. But I would say like that's like a genuine fear, like I would be I'm a little bit fearful, like if my dependents or people I'm dependent on, like even like my father, like, if they die, I'll be very sad. And we should act in a way not to allow these things to happen if possible within our power. But then yeah, nature can be really brutal. But the point is, through yagya, um through yagya we can have like a direction, we can have like a vision or a goal or a connection to something greater than ourselves. And through that connection, many times like there's no need for fear to enter. Or we can use this like how to say inspiration that we have, or this like yardstick, or this how to say we can use yagi as an opportunity to overcome fear, because we have a goal, or we have a direction, or we have a vision, or we have a principle, and fear doesn't need to enter into this. So I guess it's good to stop. We spoke about, you're not the body or the soul as a principle. We talked about happiness and distress. We talked about, like the incessant desires, like rivers into the ocean, but the ocean just stays as it is, but doesn't get disturbed. So we can also like imbibe these principles. And we spoke about krodha, attachment, and anger. And then I tried to introduce the concept of yagya. Yeah, in like a kind of practical, simple, non-religious way. So I'll stop if anyone has something they want to add or ask or how is fear of death different than some fear that arises out of love for someone? I imagine they must be different. How is fear of death different than fear that arises out of love? I don't know. I mean, it's a very relative world, very subjective world. I think you have to analyze and see. I think the fear out of love and fear out of death, like on a material platform, is probably very similar. Like I was talking about, like fear that my wife dies. I would say that fear that my wife is dying out of love is probably of a similar quality to the fear I have of dying, because I love my own body, or I love my wife's body. Uh, so I'm not sure if I would make much distinction. Like, again, the principle I was mentioning is all based on your consciousness. So you can analyze, you can introspect and be honest, and you can analyze, like, what is my motivation? Why am I fearful of this? Why am I fearful of that? Usually, I would say fear, like on a mundane level, is like we're losing something that we're attached to. Like fear comes from attachment. So, but some things it's good to be attached. Some things it's our duty to be attached. I should be attached to my wife. If I'm not attached to my wife, then I can't do my duty. So, like this, I'm not sure I would make a big thing. And ultimately, fear is like, in one sense, it's almost a negative. The positive that I tried to bring in was yagya. Like, okay, fear is, what is the positive of fear? Like, do the good stuff, and then the fear won't come. I don't know if you have some realizations about this fear and love and fear and death. I'd be happy to hear, because I'm not sure.
No, yeah, I was just thank you for your explanation. I think that explains it, that in the material plane, both these kinds of fear are of similar characteristics. And the example you gave really justifies that. So thank you.
Good, very well. Anybody wanna add or challenge or whatever? Just I don't know how I did.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Um, so I was thinking about how fear could be sometimes in my brain like positive versus negative. Like if I see a tiger, it's pretty good to fear the tiger and run away. So I was wondering like how do we make that distinction between like positive fear versus like, oh, this fear is not good for me, or is fear totally a negative connotation?
Yeah, interesting point. Well, if like in relationship to how I was speaking, like if we use like Yagya as the positive principle, like the positive outlook, like okay, let me be connected and let me do activities that make me feel connected and make me connected. Um, then I would say like fear that stops us from being connected and feeling connected or being able to perform activities that make us connected is bad fear. And fear that helps us and inspires us to take shelter of yagya or like the principle of doing good and being good and contributing good, then that fear is healthy. And then the only one who really knows is like you. So yeah, I definitely think in today's like situation, like I did mention, like sometimes fear is definitely good. But yeah, that's that's the principle that I would say. Yeah, like the fear that like help us go closer to our goal is like useful, whereas that fear, and that might mean protecting our body. That might mean not getting in the elevator with the tiger. You know what I mean? Because if we get in the elevator with the tiger and we die, then we're not able to use our body anymore to do good things. So such a fear is like is like part of the system of nature so that you can do yoga. You know, it's like built into your body to protect you so that you can do yoga. Because if you die, you can't do yoga. Or you have to take birth again and learn how to walk and talk and all this stuff, and then that can go in any direction. So I think that's a good principle, like that fear which helps us go closer to yagya or to our goal or to our like positive contribution, then that fear we should be grateful for. But even if it's a negative thing, like don't go down that dark alleyway. Well, that's stupid because I'm doing yagya. I'm gonna go down that alleyway and I'm gonna do something good with my life. Like, no, not like that. Whereas that like that fear, which like anyway, you guys understood the point, right?
Yeah, I think that was an amazing explanation. Thank you. And I think, Graham, did you have something to share? I don't know if I cut you off before, but go ahead.
You know, my question was more mundane when I saw the. I assume that the text was the original Sanskrit and then the Romanized translation and then the actual translation into English. Is that
That's the question.
again? This is just a mundane question. The
Yeah,
because when you put the page on the screen, it had the original text, which I'm assuming is the Sanskrit,
yeah.
and then you had the translation or the
Roman.
transliteration, in other words, how it sounds for us English speakers, and then the actual translation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and this Yagnata coming on yet. So actually, my understanding, there's two things. There's transliteration and there's translation. So I think this is a transliteration, which means like, for example, one of the difficult things that I experienced learning Bengali, like learning the local language here, is that because I learned so much Sanskrit in the temple, uh, and we pronounce it from the transliteration, but the transliteration and like there's another one, I forget, this transliteration, which is like for literature, so like for printing and keeping everything like regulated. So when people translate, there's like standards across the world to keep consistency. But then if you translate it, how it's actually spoken is different. This is not how it's spoken. This is like the universal global system for translating Sanskrit to keep it regulated. But so many of these words, like when you actually say the Sanskrit word, is pronounced differently to how it's spelled. So I thought I knew all these words because in Bengali there's a lot of Sanskrit. So I thought I knew all these words and I had to go and relearn them all, which was very confusing.
Well,
But yeah,
and
that's the system. Yeah, sorry.
well, then there's how we assume that it's pronounced, and then how it was pronounced 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's still people that speak Sanskrit today and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant to all of our life. I mean, it wasn't relevant to me until my first 8 years of Krishna consciousness didn't make any difference. Only when I started learning Bengali, then I was like, oh, I have to relearn all these words because, and even Bengali is a different accent, right? So the Bengali will say the Sanskrit a little bit differently to how like South Indian will say. So like this, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But yeah, there's the Devanagari, the original like Sanskrit text, then the Roman transliteration, then the word for word translation, and then the translation. And then the author who translated, he also gave a purport and explanation of the verse. So that's the system here.
Well, I know that it's impossible to translate word for word because the words that come out don't make any sense, in the translated language.
Yeah, I mean, like you can translate each word for word, but Sanskrit's a pretty complex language where um, something can be translated in different ways. Like one word can be translated in different ways. So that's why, like at least with the Gita, for example, there's how they call parampara. So there's how to say like they try to preserve the line of teachers, like an unbroken line of teachers, try to preserve the meaning of the text like this. So anyway, there's no issue translating the synonyms. Like each word you can translate. That's the author's like right, I guess, and that's his service. He has to translate so we can understand, and then he put it all together in a translation. But for sure, like if you go on the internet and you look at like three different Gitas, you do get three different translations sometimes, and they might have the same theme and the same mood or not. But you do get different translations of the Gita. And this database, I'm very satisfied with this translation. I do have friends that don't use it. They prefer slightly different translation, but I have no issue using this one. And I'm reading with people for many years using this online version. And so far, I'm very satisfied with it. Haven't had any issues.
All right. Thank you so much, Urugaya, for such an enlightening talk and just going through it to the Gita. I think was so helpful. And I also love the point you mentioned about yagya, and instead of thinking of fear as maybe like a negative, like don't do this or don't fear, but kind of making it a positive outlook on how we can contribute. And then you mentioned things like you cook in the community you're in for people and give it out. So service is a nice positive outlook for that. Um, so thank you so much for that. And I want to say that I put a link to the Gita that we were looking at from database.com, like Urugaya mentioned. So if you're curious and you want to know more or look at any of the verses that we looked at today, feel free to do that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. And as always, we'll have our Soul Fest on Saturday. Um, so if you're in town in Seattle, we'd love to see you for that. Otherwise, we'll see you back on Wisdom Wednesdays next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.